Hi, and welcome to a new Incubation talk at Dutch Game Garden. My name is Arje Loop. Today we're talking about pitch decks with Richie de Wit, also from Dutch Game Garden. Richie, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Could you shortly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Richie de Wit. I'm a business developer at Dutch Game Garden. I've been at Dutch Game Garden for almost 2 years now. The main activities where I'm involved surrounds Indigo, and the other activity that I'm very much involved in is Game Garden Agency. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that as soon as we're going to start.
The subject today is pitch decks. I was going to say, when did you decide that a pitch deck was needed or that you wanted a certain guideline? When did you start thinking about pitch decks?
Well, I started out at my first week at Dutch Game Garden, going to Gamescom together with our managing director. And while I was going with him to meetings, there were already some questions that get asked constantly by publishers, to which I thought, okay, it would be really convenient if starting the process going on, if we got new studios, that there is standardized version of a pitch deck which can be used so that once we get into talks with publishers, we actually have a good format to go off from, and that we know with each pitch deck exactly where everything is located, so that we don't have to scroll through each and single pitch deck to see, okay, where was this information again, where's that information? So after my first convention, Gamescom, I thought, okay, I wrote down all kinds of questions that publishers asked, did a lot of reading online, different resources, and yeah, kind of made a template proposal for all our studios in Game Garden Agency.
Great. That sounds like a really good backdrop to start the presentation, so yeah. Take it away.
Take it away. All right, so yeah, today I'm going to talk about creating your pitch deck. And while some of you might actually already have a pitch deck, it's really common for me when I start interacting with new studios that I ask, hey, can you send me over your pitch deck? And they say, what's a pitch deck? Or I don't have a pitch deck. And I'm like, okay, so you want to go out to talk to publishers, to investors, to different kind of parties, and you don't have a pitch deck yet. So today I want to make sure that every one of you leaves with the information that you need to make your own pitch deck, so that when you get to that point where you have to talk to a publisher or to an investor or anyone about your game or your project, that you have it with you and that it's something you don't have even to think of because you have already made it. It's up to date and a great pitch deck in general. So let's just go through this. Before we start getting into the deep stuff, there are some general tips that I want to give all of you. Things that I've seen now in almost 2 years, and even before that when I was still at school, people pitching and making presentations, is the first question you should ask yourself when you're making a pitch deck is, who is going to read my pitch deck? Who am I sending this to? Because a lot of people actually make one pitch deck and that's it. But every single person that you send it to might read it differently, might have different interests, might have, another kind of way of reading a pitch deck. So first of all, start by asking yourself, who is going to read it? If your pitch is clear to you, that's great, but you're not writing this for you. You're writing it for the person you're pitching your game to. Then the second and the third point are actually kind of intertwined. Spelling and grammatical errors. You might see some in my presentation, but this is not my pitch deck, so forgive me. And the design of your pitch deck are actually very, very important. You can basically see your pitch deck as a representative of your company when you're not there, as a business card in a sort of way, where you show your game. And if it doesn't look good or it's full of errors and people have to struggle through to read it, then you have a problem, because that means a missed opportunity, and that's a shame. The fourth point is digital and paper edition. I've seen it happen multiple times where developers only brought a digital version on their laptop fell through, or the hard drive died, or the battery was gone, and they could not access their pitch. And that's a problem. So always make sure you have a digital and a paper edition with you as well, so that you have a backup as soon as something goes wrong. And then finally, KISS. And we're not going to kiss here, but it's actually very simple. Keep it simple, stupid. With everything you write during your pitch deck, think about how can I make this, convey this information as short and concise as possible. We always tend, if we're passionate about something, to rattle on and go through and, you know, explain your whole backstory and explain everything. But just think about, again, the person who is going to read it. What does he actually need to have in order, or information does he need to have in order to make a decision, which is usually very concise. One example of that is something I came across when I was building this presentation, was by Simon Byron from Curve Digital. It's a publisher. And he actually said, one game we've recently signed put its 6-word elevator pitch front and center, and we were already on board before we'd seen anything specific. So that's something, if you're going for something concise, that can work. And you've all been working on your messaging today, as I'm being told by Arye, which is extremely important, because I think doing that exercise also helps you to think about how can I formulate my message and things concisely and clear and as short as possible with everything I just want to say. And it also can help you to formulate a great elevator pitch, which is usually the basis of a pitch deck. And this example really illustrates how powerful messaging can be. However, this doesn't mean that you can get away with it. Examples like this for people who did a pitch with 6 words and that got funded or interest by a publisher are hardly existent. And building a pitch deck and your pitch is actually hard work. It's something that needs a lot of attention and is very important. So once you get your messaging straight, you have your elevator pitch, start building your pitch deck. So what should be in your pitch deck? And this is an entire list. I'm not going to go through each of them right now because I'm going to give examples of each and everything. But as you see, it's quite a lot. Especially, actually everything is a lot, not something in specific. But most importantly, when should it be in your pitch deck? When you go to a convention, say Gamescom or GDC, you usually have a 30-minute meeting slot with a publisher, where usually at the start, you already spend 10 minutes on introducing yourself, introducing the publisher, see what they're doing, and then you get down to business. Then you'll have approximately 15 minutes to convey your message, because the other 5 minutes are usually spent running to your next meeting. So there are parts of your pitch deck that you should have from the start, and a part that should be ready and done right after the convention when you want to follow up with the publisher. And these are kind of divided that way. So before I get into every single one, so the title page, well, necessarily it speaks for itself. Intro game, that's more of your elevator pitch. What's this game about? What's your hook? What's your unique messaging? A trailer, because you want to show off, you know, what it is that your game actually is, because usually you don't have time to play through demos. Your company page, and I'll get to that, why that's so important. What's the opportunity? So what are you asking? What are you pitching? And then going into what you actually need. That's something that you really need to have as soon as you go out to talk to publishers, because these are the things that would come up, give the publisher a good idea of what you want, and if it's interesting for them or not, if it's worth their time, if it's worth your time. And the other ones, also very extremely important, but make sure you have it right after the convention, after you send your pitch deck over to them. So we're going to go through each and every one of these, and I'm going to give you examples of some pitch decks that I've gotten through Game Garden Agency, some information I've blurred out in the most artistically way possible. You will see that soon enough. But it will give you an idea of a sort of build-up of how things look. So we start out with the title page. An interesting example that I've been working with is Herald by Wisfire. And what I really like about what they've done, they actually built this online, putting it behind a password on their website and making this interactive. I couldn't show it, but it has moving images in the background. So immediately when you open this presentation or this pitch deck, you'll have an idea of what the game is about before you even read through the whole thing. It's always good to, at every single pitch deck every single starting page of your pitch deck, to show your game logo, show who you are, so your company logo, which is something that's missing here and I don't really like. For them, their hook is there, an interactive period drama, so that's a good thing because it immediately gives thought about what it is that they're looking at. What is this document? Because they get documents a lot, so I understand that it might be weird, so do I have to mention that it's a pitch deck? Yeah, because they get a lot of these documents. And what I really like about their example is that they have 2 buttons, set sail, which makes sense for Herald because it's a game on a ship, which actually takes you through the presentation, but also download the demo, because that immediately gives the publisher a chance to start out and play the game, have an idea what the game is about. So these are kind of the elements that I really think everyone should have in there. Logo, your hook, what's this document, who are you, so your studio, and then something like, okay, if you're not making it interactive, you don't have to do that, but a link somewhere, it can even be down somewhere in the description or like an extra, but make sure that they can go to your demo. And bonus points if you've got a moving image, which I cannot show right now. Intro game. So here we come to what we know as your elevator pitch. This is the first page usually that people tend to go after the first, after your opening page. And here you need to grab them immediately. What's your game about? So here's your elevator pitch, 3 sentences, describe what your game is, that's it. That's more, not more, you're not gonna get any more. Keep it short, again, keep it simple, stupid. Make sure that this is really short. Then for Herald, and we can debate if these are unique, but list your 3 most unique aspects of your game, your gameplay features, what's unique about them. Because, you know, and there's different examples. What I really like about this is because it's just 1 page, it gives me a good understanding of what the game is. They actually highlighted some of their most important aspects in the image, and then what they consider to be their unique selling points. And that's just everything that you should tell them about your game. That's it, because other things will come up later on if they're interested. So keep it short. Another example, this is a game by Little Chicken that they're still developing and releasing soon, is they did it in a different way. So they actually used a single page for each and every mechanic. So they had 3 mechanics, but they used a single page to highlight it and show it a little bit of a visual on the background of what that looked like. But even better, and this is a pro tip because I've seen this with a lot of publishers, if you have GIFs of your gameplay, use that. Don't even use text, maybe a little bit, but use GIFs, because that immediately tells a publisher what it is that, you know, they're looking at, how it works. It's really short, and they have an idea of the gameplay. Callum from Raw Fury actually said that multiple games that they've signed recently are games that actually not even send it a pitch deck at first, but in the email describe that short version of what their game is, put GIFs in their email, and then send that over. And then they were like, okay, yes, we really need to know more about this game. And that's how we actually hooked them in. So GIFs can be a very important thing nowadays, and use it in your pitch deck if you have them, and otherwise create them. Trailer. I don't want to go into what makes a good trailer or not, because I think a couple of months back you've actually had a workshop on creating trailers. Thanks to Tom, I had a great link, which he also put in the Discord, I think, about everything that makes up a good trailer, so watch that one. The only thing what I want to say, and what I found really important, is gameplay. Don't give me a trailer where I'm watching story elements, unless that's a really, really important part of your game. You describe your unique game design mechanics, because if you're telling me these are the 3 game design mechanics, and then I'm watching a trailer and I'm first looking through 80 seconds of your story and your background of your characters, you've lost me. So please make sure your unique elements are highlighted in your trailer. And for the other tips, you can watch this thing. Thanks, Tom. And one more important aspect, because I know that if you have a digital version trailer, incorporating it in your pitch deck is very easy, but when you have a physical version, that's less easy. Use screenshots. Make screenshots of your game mechanics, use that instead of a trailer, and then if you do your follow-up and you send the pitch deck over, then the trailer will be in there, so you can do that way. Your company page. It's actually really funny. There's 2 interns at Dutch Game Garden now working on business development with me, and they've interviewed several publishers and investors, and what actually came out of that, and we tried to rank what is the most important thing that a publisher is looking at first. Is it the game? Is it the way what you know about the market? Is it your budget? Is it team? And it actually turned out team was number 1. They had the trust in a team that what they presented could be finished. So this page next to your game is really important, and I really liked, for example, what Wishfire did on their page. They said where they came from, what they're doing, went in a little bit about their mission statements, about their vision of what a game should be according to them, because that makes it inherently a unique game that only Wishfire can make, for example, because it's their unique vision. They are the ones that have a certain background to back that up and have that experience, and they're presenting that in that way. Because if a publisher, for example, sees this, another roguelike, and he wants to know, okay, but why you guys? Why shouldn't I go with someone else? Why do I have to go with this one instead of that one? So this page is really important. List on this page who you are, if you have a vision or a mission statement about what you think games should be and why you're making this game, list it there, and put your teammates on there. And even better, if you have something like this, which can be better in this page, is that it actually links through to either their resumes, their LinkedIn pages, certain articles about, let's say you already got some press or in the past, some articles that back up the story that you're trying to tell. This is a little bit, and you can link that. If someone clicks the image, you can go through and it goes to your LinkedIn, because then they can immediately see what the experience is that you bring to the table. And yeah. So that's something that you should definitely have. Then an opportunity page. And here we actually go a little bit more into your elevator pitch. A lot of times I find that if I read through pitch decks, it's written from a position of please give me money. And it should actually be the other way around, because publishers need developers just as much as developers need publishers. So what you're trying to communicate here, or try to instill in the publisher, is the fear of missing out. This is an opportunity that you present to a publisher that they shouldn't be able to leave laying behind. So if you do your opportunity page or your pitch, formulate it in a way that makes sense to that publisher. And how you can do this is very simple. It's researching your publisher. What kind of games did they do before? Are there any examples of things that they really like? Did they talk about the way that they like to be pitched to? Or are there any other, you can look through their backlog. What kind of games do they do? So for example, this is another one by Little Chicken. Of course, the top one is a little bit of an unfair advantage, because if you already have the development funds, it's very easy to go to a publisher and say, hey, I only need distribution. And then the publisher says, okay, that's interesting because I don't have to give money. But, you can do this in multiple ways. And what they actually are communicating here is saying, hey guys, we got a game, you've seen the game in the previous pages, we don't look for money, we're looking for distribution and publishing partners, we have experience, 16 years of experience, and we're now communicating an edgy topic aligned with current events and trends, so it's very up to date and relevant to the publisher that they're trying to communicate to. And this is the unique thing that our game does. It's a combination of RTS mechanics with production line gameplay. So how you can formulate this is filling in a SWOT analysis. Your strengths and your opportunities are something that you can use to formulate this pitch. And again, if you're building a pitch deck, please read it again. And I mean, you don't have to, be rude to a publisher in saying, oh, if you don't publish my game now, you suck, or something like that, because you want to give them a fear of missing out. It's just really thinking about the things that make your game unique to a publisher. And the interesting part about this is this can never be the same kind of thing for every single publisher, normally, because a publisher is looking for different things. If you're publishing or pitching to Raw Fury or Devolver, then they are looking for different things, and different things speak to them than if you are talking to Deep Silver, who's doing more like bigger games. So really, when you're building a pitch deck, there cannot be only one version. There needs to be a version for single or for different people, for different opportunities, and build that in that sense. So for the next part, funding, and with that I don't mean the funding that you're going to ask for, but the funding that you bring to the table yourself. This actually, in a certain way, can enforce the pitch that you just given. I know that a lot of you might not have the funding that you've put in, or you didn't put any funding in, or some might have grants that they put in, but this page is showing to the publisher that you've either already put in a lot of time or effort into the game. So if you don't have funding that you've put in, like fiscal money that you threw at the game, but your hours, that can also be put in here. Listen, we have a team of 5 people. We've been working on this game for a year and a half already. This much hours, and then a publisher himself can do the math and think about, okay, what did they actually put in already, or is it just new? But it can be anything. It could be a Kickstarter that you've done. It could be a grant from Utrecht, grants from public funds. And this is, by the way, what I meant with I professionally blurred out the numbers. And even family, friends, and private investments. Sometimes people, their parents invest something in a company, or, it's just to show, okay, we've already put in some hours and some work into this game, and we're not coming to you to fund our entire game. We've done the work. Then we go into the good stuff. And sorry for this, but I had to do this. So a lot of single time. Can you actually read it? I think this is the greatest piece of work that I've ever made. A lot of times when people send in pictures, or if they even have a pitch deck and they send it over to me, one thing is missing, and that's the amount that they're asking. And I'm not the only one who noticed this. A lot of publishers notice this as well. Apparently, because a lot of people are actually afraid to say, okay, I really need this money, otherwise I cannot make the game. So please, 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 if you make a pitch deck, just tell them, how much do you need? How much do you need to make this game? Because publishers will throw away your pitch deck immediately. If this is not listed or in any other way communicated what it is you want from them, it could be anything else than money. It could be, help with marketing. It could be help with distribution. It could be porting, but communicate to them what it is you're asking from them. Because if you don't, it's just a missed opportunity, and then you've spent all this time trying to build that relation, and it's out of the window because they won't do it. And that's not necessarily your game's fault. That could just be a stupid thing inside of your pitch deck. So please don't do that. A budget breakdown is also something that I really like, but this is a way of how Wishfire actually built their page where they ask for a certain amount of money. And there are some things I'm finding very wrong with this, some things I like. First of all, nowhere on this page it shows me what the exact amount is. I actually have to count it up myself. Don't do that. Just say, I need 100K. I need 50K, I need a million, whatever, I need this. I do like the idea, and I think that's important, where you specify, before they even go into your whole financial plan, where is this money going to get spent on? Because, for example, it could be that your 90% is paying your wages, and then they might say, yeah, but if it's just wages, why don't you take a job with it and do that? What is everything, It's just trying to tell them, so this is why we need it, and in their case, it's more porting, it's redesign, it's a little bit overhead, so a little bit salary, but it's multiple things, and that shows to the publisher that you've thought about your whole financial plan. But I think this design is not very nice. They have the very nice Herald kind of background, and then they have this very flashy Google thing in there, so try to find another way to communicate it. What I do like, and this is a different one, is I'm right now giving you a set of things, a set of pages. And while I would find it convenient if these pages are in that exact order, because that is how I pitch, you could also bring some things together if you can formulate it correctly on one page. For example, for this game, I'm not allowed to tell which game this is. I'm sorry, guys. But they actually really stuck with the whole KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, and combines different sheets into one. So it combines the development cost. They have a part funded, so they put in their own money. They secured a license of some kind, and now only need this type of funding. They've said, okay, this is our schedule, so these are our milestones. This is the retail price that we think we should do, and what's our business model? For them, that's if I can guess it from here, a premium game with DLC. And they even mentioned their target audience. So while I'm giving you this resource, also think about how you want to communicate it, because in the end, of course, if I help you guys, I can use it, but you have to present it as well. So if you can bring multiple sources of information down to one sheet, and it's very, it gives you a great overview. It's not, too busy there, or it's not ugly, or it's not, anything, then this is also a great idea to communicate your stuff with. Your development cost, your forecast, and your model. One thing that I've heard and what I saw in pitch decks is that publishers like it if you did your homework. And when you're building your game or you're trying to pitch a game, it makes sense to give the publisher an idea of what it is you're aiming for. And this can be a guesstimate because they know you cannot predict this 100%, but on this page you actually show your ambition. What is it, what you're going to go for? So for this title, and I cannot go into this which title this is, but as you can see by certain games that they mentioned, they're probably in the narrative branch. They mentioned which kind of games that they're looking at, and then how much they are selling for, how much they were downloaded, and if they were episodic or not. And then in the end, they have an average. So they have an average of the amount of money that, you know, all these games combined have. And then above that, they actually say, okay, we are aiming for at least 250,000 downloads at a suggested price point of $15. So if I read this, what that says to me is that, okay, if I look at all these other titles, most of them, at least the top 3, are above 450, and some of them are way below. They took a middle ground. So they are aiming not at the high top, they're not aiming at being the bottom, they're hoping that together with us, they can aim at the middle part. So that's a forecast. That's how they think that they can do. And that's very important. Then if you have your business case, and that's something that we mentioned earlier, I think here, for example, DLC. That's something that comes after that or before that. You can do that also in multiple ways. It's kind of harder when you're doing a free-to-play kind of game, I feel, because there you have to list your ARPUs and all that stuff. But for normal premium games, it's a little bit easier to explain what your business model is. And in their case, they mention it like this. So, hey, we got this game. We think we should sell it for 20 to 25. We want to put out DLC. And there's even, we think, room for merchandise. And this is also a way how you can communicate that. And the only thing I don't like here is that as a publisher, it doesn't give me an idea how they came to this information. Because in the previous example, they gave me literally the games that they took as their starting point and then went from there. While here, I don't have any idea how they came to those numbers, if that was a guesstimate or they just came up with it. So try to communicate that. Try to communicate what kind of games you're looking at, what's the market right now, because then, yeah, that translates. So milestones, well, I think this is really straightforward. You have hopefully made a production schedule for yourself to see when you want to be done with certain stuff, and you want to communicate that to a publisher. And the only thing that I want to really communicate on this kind of page is be realistic. And with that, I mean, if you're going to go to a publisher and you're going to communicate this with them, but you haven't told them that this is really dependent on the money that you're going to get from them, so you made a development status milestone thing, and you said, okay, I'm going to be done in Q4, but in your head you know that it's only going to happen when you got their funds, and then the funding goes through in Q3, then you have a problem because you thought, oh, I still have, 8 months left to develop, and now you only have 2. Communicate that to a publisher. Say, if we get funding, this is our timeline, if we can do this quickly, otherwise things will shift. And that's the only thing you have to communicate with this page, so that a publisher, so that, the trust of a publisher doesn't immediately goes away because you communicated one thing and they thought you would help to be able to do that, and it isn't working. You don't want that, so don't do that. This is another example of how you can communicate it, is by listing the milestones, saying whenever you want it to be finished, and also divide those milestones up in the budget that you need for them. Because in a lot of times, examples with publishers, they will pay you per milestone, and they won't give you the whole amount that you need at first. They will pay you per milestone, and if one milestone is finished, they'll pay you for the next one. So this also gives a good example for a publisher from, oh, okay, so this is the kind of money that we need. Then the market. Well, this is actually goes back to the other part that we've just went through as well. Have an idea of who your competitors are or what kind of games are popular in your genre. And the better you have an understanding of what games are similar to yours, the better you can fill out that one sheet, the better your results are going to be in determining what the low, medium, and high-end sales are. If you're making a first-person game and you're going to list Call of Duty as your resource or your competitor, well, your results are going to be really high and really, not realistic. So really think about it. People who played Herald, I'm not sure if anyone played it. For me, these kind of games don't come into their space. This is not realistic in essence, because these are games that are far bigger, different kind of art style. So there are certain kinds of things that you can look at. It could be art style that are close to you. It could be, team size can be a thing. If you're comparing it with a team that has 50 people and you're saying, yeah, we're 3 and this is our competitor, that doesn't add up. If gameplay mechanics are similar and that way, and make sure that it isn't for 2018, then you can build a list of games that come close. And yeah, it might suck because it might be that the games are in your space that only sold 5,000 copies. Well, that at least gives you an understanding of the market right now and maybe lets you reevaluate your proposition. But this will make it a lot better. So again, this is how you can communicate that to the publisher. And again, it's a guesstimate. They know it's not going to be 100% accurate, so don't be afraid of that. They will do their own math, but it shows them that you've done your homework. Sales, and this is a thing that doesn't have to be in your pitch deck if you haven't sold anything of the game yet. It could be, for example, that you're working on a demo and you've put it on itch or GOG and you've already sold 10,000 copies of your demo. Then you can list it here because that gives a publisher some, confidence. Say, hey, we already sold 10,000. There's a market for this. Let's do this. If you've done a Kickstarter, but it could also be, in their case, they're pitching their sequel, that you've sold a prequel to the game you're making now, and that has a certain amount of sales. So here you'll sketch the picture of what that sales was like and how that went. And then also social proof, if you have it. Reviews, what are users saying about your game, because that just gives the publisher an idea. If you come with them with a game like this, for example, that already brings something to the table. And then even better, and they don't have it linked to those articles, because then they can just read up on it. Makes that easier for them. Then conclude your document, once again, very brief. Give a brief summary of what you just discussed about. So just, hey, we've got this game. We would really love to work with you. Make it specific. We want you to do this. We need this. And thank you very much. And then your contact info. Don't forget your contact info. Some final pointers. Well, all these points are definitely necessary for your pitch deck. The order and the way you present it may vary per studio. I like it this way because I do it in a certain way, but it's not that I find these things important and publishers don't, because I've made this by feedback from publishers and etc. But the way you present it could be, and it needs to be your own, because you cannot adapt it solely to the thing that I'm going to present for you or someone else is going to present for you. Build it so that you can present it, it makes sense, and it's a story. That's why this is a living document. If you think you can make a pitch deck and then be done with it, that's not how this works. Your pitch deck needs to grow with your project. As your project grows, so does your pitch deck. With the experiences you get, the feedback you get, you need to adapt it. And every single person, like I said at the beginning, you're pitching to, make sure you adapt it to that person. Then have it with you at all times. You should be able to have this thing on you, because you never know who you're going to run into, even if it's on a network launch at Dutch Game Garden or wherever you are. Have this thing somewhere with you on your laptop, physical copy in your bag, on a USB drive. I don't really care, but have it with you. And be ready to present. Know this pitch deck by heart, so that when you do it, someone should be able to wake you up in the middle of the night, and you should be able to pitch your game. Because if you stumble through it, that takes away the attention, and that's not good. And finally, again, art is in simplicity. Don't use too much text. Keep it to the point. communicate what is relevant, and you can expand on everything else that you want to communicate during a next meeting or face-to-face talk, or when they ask you for a certain kind of information. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Ricardo Frederik from Bad Eyes. I have a question. You were talking about comparing your games to other games with, for example, Steam Spy, and you said don't look to games that did too well because it's not realistic for your game, right?
Well, I said if you make a first-person shooter, don't look at Call of Duty. What I meant with that is that we usually tend to go for the titles that are very successful. Let's say you do have a title comparable to Call of Duty, and it's exactly that. Then you can compare it to it. But a lot of times I see people, like, for example, that what I showed with Wishfire, you know, they're building an episodical narrative-driven game, but not every episodical narrative-driven game is Firewatch. But it's easy to pick that title because it's on top of your mind. So do the research and find something that is really, really close to your game.
Okay, so I was wondering if you're making a game, let's say a roguelike, and you're finding comparable titles, and the titles that compare the best to your game didn't do so well. Does that mean that your project is bad?
Well, it doesn't mean that your project is bad, but it's gonna be a hell of a tough time to convince a publisher to give you money.
So that's a sign that you should think of another
Well,
project.
yeah, let's say that is the case, right? Do you need the funding? Do you really need it? If you really need the funding to make that game and you have to go to publisher, then I would say yes. Rethink the game that you're building, because if every sign shows that every single game that looks like yours or is in the same kind of genre points you to the direction you're not going to be able to make 1,000 sales, yeah, then you have a hard time pitching that to a publisher, because you know how you're going to pitch that. So, but on the other hand, if you do find a way to do it in your own time and you're happy with those 1,000 downloads, but you don't need a publisher, or you know, you can get a grant, it's fine if you want to do that. That's up to you. But in terms of this, you're building a business case, in an essence. A publisher, of course, wants to help you, and they're very passionate about your game, but at the end of the day, they're money driven.
You need to prove it.
Yes, you need to prove that the game they're going to invest in is going to end up at least earning back that what they have put in, and preferably a lot more. And if it does point to the sign that, you know, 1,000 sales is what you're going to get, well, then it's up to you to decide if you're happy with that or if you should do something else.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks.
All right, no problem.
That's it for today's Incubation Talk at Dutch Game Garden. I would like to thank you for watching and Richie for his expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.